Morning MMA Report is joined live by Roufusport Appleton coaches David and Andrew Kauzlaric and the newly cemented #1 ranked heavyweight in the state of Wisconsin, Chad Big Rig Johnson. Gentlemen, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Peter.
David and Andrew, let's start with you. How did Roufusport Appleton come to fruition, and tell me a little bit about your background in combat sports?
Go ahead, David.
Okay. Well, a couple things. We originally, when we started training, we were at another gym. We had an issue there with the leadership. Some things happened, whatever. When we decided, listen, like Andrew really wanted to focus on MMA. And at the time, there were no MMA gyms in the Valley. And with the issues we had in that team and leaving, it just made sense. Like, hey, let's start something with an MMA focus. And that was at that point we're like, hey, we should really hook up with, Roufusport. We had heard from, many people, Duke's the best, so we kind of started down that path. And then in that process, we met Daniel, which, anybody who doesn't know who Daniel Wanderley is, he's the head jiu-jitsu instructor at Roufusport. And I mean, he's just an animal. He's the best professor anybody could ever ask for, and he has so much experience coaching all these, UFC champions, UFC fighters, Bellator fighters. And he's just amazing. And he blew us away. He took us in. And that was kind of how it started. It was like, hey, we need to do this. We want to make sure that we link up. We're like, hey, if we want to be successful, let's link up with people who are having success in this sport. And at that point in time, and still today, it's definitely Roufusport, especially in this area. And that's kind of how it started was, hey, how do we affiliate with you? How do we become part of this? How do we learn? How do we get to the level that, we need to be to represent you properly? And that was kind of how it first started. And then, the other thing too is a lot of people think I own Roufusport Appleton, but I don't. It's just Andrew. Andrew's the only owner. I just help him because I'm his older brother, and I have my own business that's successful. And so I've kind of navigated those ways, and I help him with the marketing and things like that. But it's 100% his, and he started this when he was 20, which I think is incredible because, we started at a small little gym, $500 a month, a little hole in the wall, to we're already trying to get out of our new lease because we've expanded 3 times already in here, and we need to get a big building. Like the next one's going to be, 7 or 10,000 square feet. It's just been nothing but nonstop growth. And I attribute that to, joining a high pedigree from Duke and Daniel for sure.
Yeah, it's kind of exactly like David said, it just honestly started as a means to kind of keep training. And, my first love was jiu-jitsu, and then, fell quickly in love with kickboxing and Muay Thai and the whole MMA game. And yeah, it's just kind of crazy. It started as just a means to kind of like build up the community that I always wanted to feel a part of. I kind of wanted to create that home and that family that I always craved to be a part of. And I felt that when I went to Roufusport, and I wanted to kind of recreate that in the Fox Valley area. And, I think we've definitely done that. And then quickly it just kind of transformed into a full-fledged, full-time business where, now we're getting recognition across the whole state and, just working our way towards trying to become one of the top players, I guess, in the Midwest, obviously outside of Milwaukee. So, yeah.
Makes sense. Now, Chad, you were previously at another gym. What was it about Roufusport Appleton that you saw that you were like, it's time for me to make the switch?
It had to be the atmosphere here. Andrew and David are really great guys. They set off a great vibe. And we trained before at the last gym that I had down here in Appleton. And I really liked the guys. So coming down here was an easy change for me. It was definitely a different pace that I was used to.
That makes sense. David, you touched on it a little bit earlier with Professor Vanderlei and Duke. What would you tell the fans out there that were thinking about joining an MMA gym? What separates Roufusport from the rest of the gyms?
Well, and I say this with being in the trenches, right? Like I've trained at a ton of different gyms, and don't get me wrong, there's a ton of great gyms. Like I'm not saying that nobody else is good or anything like that, but
right.
Daniel and Duke specifically, it's the most elite level of instruction you can get in the state or in the Midwest, hands down. When we just had Duke here for a seminar last weekend.
Sure.
And when you have Duke teach you something and show you things, I've never seen anybody with that level of knowledge and pedigree in person. And the same thing goes for Daniel. You know, what people don't realize is that he's not just a jiu-jitsu coach. He's an MMA coach. He's a striking coach, in the sense that he has all this experience with the UFC guys. He's every month he's in the corner somewhere with a UFC guy, a Bellator guy, you know, whatever it is. And he's at the highest levels all the time. And it's there, when people say there's levels to this, it really is true. You know, coming from the gym I came from when we originally started, you know, that gym had good jiu-jitsu. Like, there's nothing wrong with it at all. But Daniel's is just so much better. Like, and it's not like, oh, he just knows something some people don't know. It's because he's achieved it. He's at the highest levels. And if he wasn't on the cutting edge of it, those fighters would be at a disadvantage. And there's a reason that Roufusport has a higher submission rate than knockouts. You know, I mean, Duke talks about it all the time, that all of his fighters, for such a high level of striking, they have more submissions, and he's cool with that because it's about winning. And it's just their level of instruction and knowledge and coaching is just it's above everybody else's. It's elite. It truly is elite. And that comes from the top down, from Duke and as well as Daniel. They both have been at the highest levels as competitors. They've also been there as coaches, and most other gyms cannot say that. And that's where the difference for us really was. Is it's noticeable. If you go train there and then go train somewhere else, you'll notice the difference.
Chad, the last time we saw you in the cage was at LFA 77 in Minnesota at Mystic Lake Casino. It was your first time fighting under the Roufusport Appleton banner. What was that experience like for you, going into the cage, you know, with new coaches and a big task ahead of you?
I was nervous as hell. You know, it was out of line, I guess. How it started off was, you know, a month and a half before the fight, I get a phone call from my coaches. My original coach, Mike, his back went out, and there was a list goes on of reasons why they were closing down, and I was freaking out, like, oh man, what am I going to do now? I don't have no representation, no coaches, no corners. Yeah, it was an empty hole until I came here, and the confidence that I had going into that fight after just a month of being here was incredible. That was the first time going into the fight, and I'm standing there waiting for the fight, for the announcer to start the fight up, and I was just so chill, so calm. And I'm, you know, usually, you know, walking in the cage like a caged lion, you know, back and forth, and
Right.
And I was just so chill and relaxed and confident that, you know, it was probably the best feeling I've ever had just before a fight, especially of that high quality.
Yeah, it was funny. He actually would say to us, he's like, I'm actually getting nervous that I'm not more nervous. Like, is that okay? And I'm like, I think it's okay. I think if you feel comfortable, that's a good sign. You know,
that's
confidence
true.
and staying calm in that situation is key. You know, so
Absolutely. So, Andrew and David, whenever you get a new athlete that comes to the door, especially when they come from a different gym, you know, it takes a little bit of time for you to, you know, assess their skill set and see where they're at. How was that transition with Chad coming over there, and how did you feel going into that fight?
I think it was pretty good. I mean, you know, when Chad came to us, I mean, he's known as more of a striker. You know, most of his fights are he's either finish or be finished with strikes, you know, for the most part. But what shocks people is what most people don't know about Chad is he also was a wrestler. You know, he wrestled in high school. His grappling is very good. It's not like he's a bad grappler. But, you know, coming in, the big thing is it's hard because when you're such an explosive, you know, his power and his special powers, I should say, are his explosiveness and his athleticism, which in the gym, it's hard to replicate because, you know, he can't just like try to knock everybody out in the gym, right? Like nobody would be here for him to train with. And what really was crazy is that he's such an incredible partner. I've never seen somebody with such control. He has way more control on his punches and power than like even our 170 guys. And so that was a little hard to assess because he's not going 100% in the gym. But really, you know, the big thing with us was just put him into sparring. Let's roll with him, put him in jiu-jitsu classes, open mats, let's roll, and let's see where he's at. You know, we quickly found right away some holes. We tried to work on the most simple things just for the fight because you're not going to change a whole lot a month out from your big fight. And really, It was the striking. I mean, Andrew worked with him a ton on finding the distance and range. And, you know, we really prepared for the fighter. You know, we knew Kalen. We knew what his strengths and weaknesses were. And we worked with Chad to capitalize on what we thought was needed to win. And, yeah, I mean, it seemed like he went out there and executed perfectly. And yeah, it's tough, though, to assess somebody. And really, sparring is the best way. We get them into sparring, see how they do. And usually the holes are there the first one or two sparring sessions.
Yeah, 100%. When he came, I think, like David said, it was definitely a shock to us just that how good his wrestling and grappling skills were, and his ability to kind of mix it up in a grappling situation with wrestling and jiu-jitsu and punches involved. So that was, I think, the biggest eye opener. We're like, wow, okay, like pretty athletic. He actually knows what he's doing. Really good control, really good positioning. Does not put himself out of position a lot when he's grappling, especially in wrestling exchanges. And like David touched on too, his athleticism is unbelievable. His power is unbelievable. And those are some of the things that I think I noticed right away with his striking. I just was like blown away by the power I could feel through the pads. I mean, a couple of times that we throw some of the combinations that we used in the fight, yeah, I was actually worried I was hurting my hand before the fight. I'm like, oh man, I hope I can keep my hand healthy just to hold pads for him till the fight. But yeah, it's definitely tough. But I think, just like David said, the quickest way is just sparring, and you kind of see the holes right away for sure.
Sure. So, in the thing, going into that fight, did you know that you were going to have that speed advantage, or was that something you saw during the fight?
I figured that we all figured that we were gonna have the advantage in that fight on the speed, and we didn't really know where the strength was gonna be at, but how it played out. I mean, it kind of played out to the plan that we had set.
That makes sense. Going into the fight with Kalen, what advice did you guys give him, moments before you went out?
And let me try to think. What we worked on the whole camp really was the same advice every time. What we try to do is pick a couple things each. I usually handle like the grappling side, and Andrew usually handles the striking side. Not that he can't handle the grappling, but we just kind of split it up that way. And he's a really good striking coach, so it helps. But, my focus was, we knew Kalen, and I don't mean this in a derogatory way, but it's kind of like a one-trick pony. We knew that, like, he loves to wrestle. He loves to charge people and hold them against the cage. And in all of his fights, he kind of does the same thing, where he really just wants to get him pressed up against the cage, and that's where he likes to work them. And so we really focused on this was, let's not be on the bottom with him because he can be dangerous there. Let's not be against the cage. So we worked a lot on, how to mitigate when somebody's, trying to close the distance and trying to spin them. So turn them when there's like this, when you're pushing forward, you can't really go side to side very well. So we worked with like the spinning around where you get the underhook, spin them onto the cage. So you use their momentum to put them on the cage. And so I just told him, I said, you'd be waiting for him to shoot in. And I said, you either sprawl or you turn him on the cage, and then you punish him for thinking he can do that. And I think Andrew, for the striking side was, it was all about finding the distance and range and just not letting him in close. Let's keep him at distance with your strikes. And that was it, just stay focused.
Yeah, I could tell a lot about how the fight was going to go just based off of watching Kalen Hall's one loss to Daniel James, which was a great fight. Obviously, Daniel James is really tough. And Kalen Hall is a great competitor, tough guy too. But just kind of watching that fight, because I think it was only his only pro loss that he had. So it was kind of a good eye opener to, what could actually beat him, because obviously nobody had done it before.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, honestly, like Chad said, and like David said, everything that happened in the fight, and this doesn't always happen, everything that happened in the fight is exactly how we predicted that it was going to go. It was just, obviously good in our favor that it happened that way. I knew Kalen Hall liked to dip down a lot and dip his head a lot, and I knew that with Chad being a little bit shorter, that and his uppercut is insane. I knew that was going to be a key factor, and I think if I do remember, it was kind of like an uppercut hook that put Kalen Hall down the last shot, kind of right before the finish came. So yeah, just establishing that range. Just told him stay long, stay patient, breathe. That was a big thing too. Is I think a lot of people were underestimating his gas tank. And that was something that we worked really diligently on in 4 weeks, which is tough to do, but I think we managed to do it for sure.
Yeah,
well,
I agree.
just to add on that one thing about the gas tank, like something that we talked about with Chad, when he first came to us, his gas tank was awful. I mean, it was really, really bad. And we found out it's not from him not putting the work in. It was the fact that his previous gym, there was nobody there that could push him. And so he said right away, we got a ton of big guys here, and including our MMA coach, Chuck Gruber, who is just one of the OGs. He was number 2 in the state back when he fought years ago. And he's, a big dude. And, being able to put that pressure on him, Chad said within his first week, he said, I've never been pushed this hard in my entire career. And he said, it's forcing my lungs to go to a place they've never been before. And it really, we were prepared to go 3 rounds in that fight. And I knew that everybody was thinking the opposite, that, Chad ain't going to make it out past a couple minutes. But truly, I mean, I felt that we would have done 3 rounds just fine. But it's that, focusing on that gas tank and being pushed so that level of conditioning can get there.
Yeah. Chad, I spoke with you a couple weeks back on social media, and you made a comment that really stood out to me. You said going into the whole fight, you wanted your respect. Did you feel disrespected going into that fight, or what did you mean by that?
Well, I wouldn't say it's so much disrespected as underestimated, I guess would probably be the best fit for that. A lot of people on social media, I guess, were just nobody expected me to win. Nobody had me predicted to win. It was just more like, everybody was on the Hall train, and I just wanted that respect that I, deserved, that I had a chance, and I am a dangerous heavyweight, and I do have a chance at competing at the top level. And I just for years I've been chasing him, and I just wanted that chance to prove it, that, I seen holes in his game, and I just wanted to be able to prove it to everybody and, to stop the doubt.
Yeah. In that fight, you were landing a lot of clean shots. At one point in time when you dropped him, he initiated the clinch and tried to wrestle, and you were able to stuff that and land some more shots. Was there a turning point in that fight where you said, this is my fight, I got him?
No, actually, I never say that until after I'm done and I get pushed off. Technically, it ain't over until I do get pushed off, or he taps or anything. I mean, it's just, you have to go and go and go. And I just, my off switch never gets turned off until the ref pushes me off.
Okay. I saw that you signed with Jason House and Iridium Sports Agency. Congratulations. I think that's a fantastic move. I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but I think House has put more people in the UFC over the last couple of years than anybody. How's that experience been like for you, and what was the deciding factor?
It's great. Well, he's got, like I said, he's got some of the best numbers out there. So that was probably one of my biggest factors of actually deciding to sign with him. We all had our talk here at the gym, and we all kind of agreed on that was our best fit.
Okay, and then December 7th, you guys have some fighters fighting on the Stevens Point card. Is that correct?
Yep. We got one amateur making her debut, Peyton Olejniczak. She's somebody to definitely watch out for. We had a couple other guys that were going to be on that card, but just injuries and, couldn't find them fights. So.
Right. So what's next for Roufusport Appleton, and what's next for Big Rig? You got any fights that you can announce or on the horizon?
Go first, Chad.
Well, as of right now, I think we are looking for about the new year, early in the new year, first quarter. I think we're gonna decide on where we're gonna go. There's a few doors that are open. We talked a little bit more today about it as well. So, we got our options, that's for sure. But like I said, I guess we really can't comment on that yet until we get a little bit more information.
Thanks.
Expect a big show. That's all I'll say.
Absolutely.
Okay. Sounds good.
Just to say, Chad has a ton of options ahead of him. Jason House has been great to work with. There's a ton of options for him, including, potentially fighting for the LFA heavyweight title. It could be a UFC call. It could be Bellator or PFL. I mean, he's in a good position right now, thanks to his last fight and that great finish. So we're kind of waiting through the holidays here to get that settled, but we'll definitely announce, with you guys first once we figure out what's going to happen there. But yeah, Chad has an exciting, bright future for next year for sure. As Andrew said, Peyton, who's fighting December 7th, it's her amateur debut, but she is a monster. We expect her to rise through the ranks very quickly. We have a ton of guys. Kyle Lottie, who you guys know, he used to be at Unified. He last 6 or 8 months came over here. He's a beast, man. He's been training every week so hard. He could fight any guy at 170 pro in the state right now and do really well. And we have a whole list of upcoming fighters. You saw Spencer Morgan on the last show. He made his debut. 25-second submission. He's a beast. And then the biggest thing too is Andrew. We're going to get Andrew back in there. He's coming off of a rough stretch here. I think you guys were there at the LFA card in Madison.
Yeah.
And, he fought Austin Lutchen, and, he's a great opponent, and we don't take anything away from him. Unfortunately, I wish it wasn't controversial, but take those things and you just use them to get stronger. And so Andrew will be making hopefully an LFA pro fight again. They're hopefully coming back here soon, close. So, we have a really big year next year, and I expect big things and real big things for Chad. So
that's great. Well, I expect, great things for Roufusport Appleton, going forward. I'm real high on your gym. I think you guys are extremely underrated, and I mean that very sincerely. Take some time out right now and let us know who your sponsors are, Chad, and if Roufusport Appleton wants to give any shout outs, time's yours.
Go ahead, brother.
Oh man, I got a whole list from here. We got Ultimate Construction, Chase Your Beast, NKS Tire, Marinette, Rock and Refuel, just to name a couple.
Okay.
Yeah, and then for us, just always trying to give thanks back to the coaches and the team that kind of, provided this platform for us, which is Roufusport and Professor Daniel Wanderlei, Scott Joffe, Duke Rufus, Joe Nichols, Scott Cushman, all the coaches at Roufusport, all the other assistant coaches there too have all been extremely incremental in our growth. The fact that we haven't even been open for 4 years and we're doing the things that we're doing, I think is, just goes to show like the environment, the culture that we breed here. And the world-class knowledge that we're able to, put on display just through all of the things we've learned from Roufusport. So, yeah, expect definitely big things in 2020. Like David touched on earlier, we're looking for a new space, looking at getting like triple the space that we have now because we're very limited where we're at now. So we're going to be doing expansions in the next few months and kind of just making do with what we got in our lease now. So, yeah, just expect big things. And anybody that's looking to train in the Fox Valley, Appleton area, or even we have a lot. Chad, for example, lives, an hour away and drives and makes the drive 4 or 5 times a week to train. We have a ton of people that live super far away, Fond du Lac, Oshkosh, Green Bay, Beaver Dam, Door County. You name it. So anybody that wants to come train, you're always welcome. Yeah, that's about it.
Yeah.
Anything you want to add, David?
No, I just want to really reiterate, that this is all in part to Duke, Scott Cushman, Joe Nichols on the striking side. They've been, completely instrumental in helping us get to where we're at. And obviously, I have a special relationship with Professor Wanderlei. Daniel is the man, and I'm not talking just jiu-jitsu. As a coach, as a friend, as a human being, he's a good person. He's a family man. And just incredibly grateful to be underneath him and under their tutelage, because where we're at in such a short amount of time with coming from nowhere, just to give everybody an idea, when this gym started, Andrew was a no-stripe blue belt, and he was the only one. Like, there was nothing else. And in 3.5, a little over 3.5 years to be where we're at is incredible. And it's thanks to those people, their tutelage, their help, and obviously all the members here too that don't fight but are training partners and, keep the 100%. Lights on. And it's very important too. So, and guys like you too, like First Warning, that are, giving recognition to fighters like Chad and Spencer and things like that. It's incredible to see MMA grow, and we just are happy to be part of it. And, we plan to be a big player for the years to come.
Well, we appreciate those words for sure. Guys, thanks a lot for your time. It was a pleasure interviewing you guys today.
Hey, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, guys. Love what you're doing, so keep it up.
Yep, keep it up.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Appreciate it much.